Declaration of Independence talks about the fundamental freedom given to us by our Creator. Out of touch? Yeah, us professors are out of touch still. But even more out of touch, many of our government officials. But as I look at this, I've got a teleprompter in front of me that says, then who do we have to blame? Well, who do we have to blame? To a certain extent, we have to blame ourselves for sleeping so long, for waiting too long to say no to big government. Thanks much.
There is a very real purpose in having Dr. Marmerstein come before I did. Oh, it's not coming in. Does that work? Hey, I can hear myself now. I'm going to start my Annie Marmerstein joke again. There's a very real purpose in having art come before me. It illustrates something moral about our situation right now, which is that our situation is ugly, and it's going to keep getting uglier as time goes on. So, having paid him back for his compliment, I've got a joke too. What do you get when you cross Congress with a pig? You can't do it. There are some things even a pig won't do. And there are some things, I suspect, that probably one doesn't want to be associated with, and I suspect the federal budget is that right now. I noticed that until a short while ago, public protest was something admirable in this country, at least if you believe the New York Times. That was about, I don't know, a year, 5 months, 11 days ago. Public protest was a good thing. And then George W. Bush left the White House. And now suddenly public protest is racist. At least that's what the New York Times tells me. And everything they say must be true on some planet. And so if that's true, well, and I also understand all you guys are fomenting violence. So I keep looking for the bazookas and armored personnel carriers. And so far I haven't seen any. But why are the Tea Party protesters supposed to be so bad? Well, there's a really simple reason for that, right? Because there's no reason you people have to be upset. That's what I keep hearing. I mean, the fact that the government is going into the hole about $1 trillion a year. That's not our public debt, bear in mind. That's the yearly deficit for the next 10 years. And that's not what happens if the president's plan fails. That's his plan. And at some point along the line, somebody might think that we got a problem. Somebody might think that that's something to worry about. The chairman of the Federal Board of Reserve spoke to Congress the other day and said some very interesting things. One of the things he talked about is the interest on the federal debt. I remember when a federal deficit of $100 billion was a lot. I remember when $400 billion was a lot. But we're now looking at a yearly deficit of over $200 billion a year. That's the interest on the debt. That's just the interest we're paying. That's not the deficit. That's not the public debt. That's just the yearly interest. It's estimated that by 2020, the yearly interest on the federal debt is going to be $723 billion. That's not what happens if anything goes wrong. That's the plan. That's what government's planning on. And, of course, it's going to be worse than that. Because if you look at any of these estimates of future growth in federal spending, future growth in federal revenues, they all make completely unrealistic assumptions. I've looked through some of these documents, and I can tell you that they assume that Congress is going to do things it's never done before. It's going to cut spending that it's always refused to cut in the past. It's going to fail to raise benefits that it's always increased in the past. And I believe it's going to make pigs fly. If you put all that into the deficit, what do you get? Well, you get what I just said, $723 billion interest on the debt. That's if everything goes right. Now, on top of all of that, we just passed a health care plan. And they keep telling us that it's almost $1 trillion. I love that because the phrase occurs again and again. Almost $1 trillion over 10 years. But that's what we political scientists refer to as a gross verbological inexactitude, otherwise known as a big fat lie. It's going to be at least $1.5 trillion, and it's probably going to be a lot further. And again, you've got all of these tricks, all of these scheduling devices to make this thing look affordable, if you call $1 trillion affordable. But $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, pretty soon you're talking real money. Okay, so we're going to put that on top of all the other stuff I mentioned. And then last but not least, we're going to pass a climate bill. And that climate bill is supposed to save us from global warming. Living in South Dakota, ladies and gentlemen, I am in favor of global warming. I think we ought to leave our cars running all night. But assuming for a moment that you think global warming is a problem, that we ought to do something about it, great. Is this climate bill going to do something about it? No. By the estimates of the very science which supposedly justify it, it's not going to make a dent in global warming. What it is going to do is hurt the American economy, and everybody understands this. That's the way it's supposed to work. It's going to raise the price of energy, and it's going to raise the price of anything that's produced with energy. Natural gas, gasoline, Art Marmorstein's speeches, anything that requires burning fossil fuels is going to be more expensive. That's the plan in Washington. And it's something maybe we ought to be a little concerned about. It's no surprise that if you've been paying attention to Washington, you know that there are a series of reports that generally get issued about this time. There was a report due from the White House on Social Security. It's in the law. It's supposed to be there. And, well, it's a little late. They said, we have to wait and take into account the effect of the health care bill on Social Security. I'm not sure that it's really supposed to have an effect on Social Security, unless they're telling us. The real thing is they don't want to tell us the numbers because the numbers are horrendously bad. We're supposed to have a budget report from Congress right now telling us what they're going to spend money on and how much for the next year, and that they're not producing. Why not? Because they don't want to tell us what the numbers really are. The numbers are really, really bad, and probably we ought to worry about it. Now, I suppose a lot of people here are probably familiar with the story of the prodigal son. I am. I was always a little bit disturbed by that story. I mean, I'm one of these people who thought that the son who stayed home and worked while the other went off had a point, you know. I mean, where's my fatted calf and all that stuff? But still, it's obviously a good story, right? One son goes off, takes his half of the inheritance, spends it on prostitutes and a health care bill. And so he's gone off doing that stuff, right? And the other son stays at home and works hard and pays his taxes and shows up at Tea Party meetings and stuff like that. And then the other son comes back and, well, it's, you know, like we killed a fatted calf. Well, that's a great story. It's got a good ending. The point, I suppose, is no matter how bad you are, God will always receive you back. I'm comforted by that. But there's part of that story that people keep forgetting. Somebody's got to fat the damn calf. Somebody's got to grow the food. Somebody's got to produce the stuff. Right now, you look around the world, the nation of Greece is going belly up. That's a whole nation.